Welcome to the Not Even Wine with Dinner podcast. I'm your host, Kristen, and we are here to talk about all things life, love, loss, and liquor. So let's uncork the bottle and get this party started. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Not Even Wine with Dinner, episode 16. Okay, my friends. So today I already feel like I'm going to end up getting a bit rambly because I'm quite passionate about this topic. And the topic that I have today is called Life Isn't a Competition, Active Listening is Dead. And this is something that is really on my heart because I experience it a lot. I know I'm not alone. I just feel like I have to get this out based on some experiences that just happened in my life. So the last week, my husband had to have emergency surgery. It wasn't anything life-threatening, but it was just, it threw a kink in the week, so to speak. It wasn't something that we were planning. And as we started talking to other people about it, what we found was, and this is not just this particular situation or this one example, but people don't listen. People immediately have to tell you that they've had what you're having, that it's not as bad as you think it's going to be, or it's worse than you think it's going to be, or theirs was worse. They just they're just not listening. People don't listen. It's just so fucking frustrating. So, I mean, it really, really is. And I just thought about this, and I've been talking to a lot of friends about it, and it's just a cultural thing. As a society, we have changed. Because of social media, at least this is what I believe, because of social media, we all have a voice, but we've lost our ears. I mean, if you think about it, there's kind of this saying about how we have one mouth and two ears for a reason. Or as my husband's grandmother would say, close mouth, engage brain. So stop, think, listen before you speak. We do not do that anymore. And I do believe that this is because of social media. When you think about when Facebook started, that's just the best example, it was about finding people, finding long lost friends. And it was fun. It was like, oh, are you on Facebook? Oh my gosh, I found so-and-so. I went to elementary school with them. Or, oh my gosh, I stumbled on my long lost boyfriend from high school. And it was fun. Then as it started to gain momentum, more and more and more people engaged with it. And of course, now we have, hundreds and hundreds of platforms. But now we have influencers and everyone's got a voice. Even what I'm doing right now, this is my voice and I'm putting it out there. So I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but what's happened is because everybody's so concerned about being heard and about speaking, no one is listening. I can't emphasize that enough. No one is listening. I want to explain a kind of what the difference is and what I'm talking about, because I'm sure you've heard the terms active listening. And it doesn't mean that you have to start walking around speaking in, mental health speak or therapy speak or anything like that. It's just becoming aware that this is a problem and there's a high probability that you do it too. I do it. I know I do it. I'm ADHD. I was diagnosed as a hyperactive child when I was 2. So I've had it my whole life. I'm not making an excuse of it, but I have become far more aware that with age, with social media being an influence, with menopause, with brain fog, that my brain is constantly going 100 miles an hour and it's very hard for me to focus. So again, not an excuse, I am just aware of it. And when you're trying to talk to somebody and you don't feel like they're listening to you, it's not good for your mental health. It is definitely something I would call an epidemic. When I wrote about it, on Medium, I had a lot of response of people saying, you know what, I know I do this, or, oh my gosh, you are 100% right. This is exactly what's going on, and it's awful. Nobody wants to listen to what you have to say. They want to tell you their version of the story. All right, so active listening is dead. That's where I'm going with this. And what I feel like what's happening, what I mean by that is we've lost our empathy for other people because we're so desperate to tell our own story. I'm not an expert. I will always say this. I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not trying to be some self-help guru. I'm just some chick out here sharing my opinions based on my own experiences and things I've learned. I have had my own therapies. I have been to nonviolent communication courses. Again, doesn't make me an expert. It's just these are things I've heard repeatedly throughout my adult life, and I want to share them because I do believe they're true. I believe they're accurate, and I think they're important. So active listening, by definition, when I started to look into trying to find a good definition, that I could cite a source with, there were many different versions. A lot of them got a little wordy and a little bit mental healthy. So what I did was I kind of compiled a definition that I made up from different definitions that I found online. And I used, they were all sourced by different universities, psychology websites, and government medical websites, the National Institute of Medicine and things like that. So this is what I came up with. Active listening is the practice of being fully present in a conversation. Tune in, pause, suspend your assumptions. That's one of my favorite. So that you can understand, comprehend what is being said, and be able to repeat and restate a paraphrased version of what the speaker said, demonstrating unbiased acceptance. Whew. Okay, that's a lot. I'm going to kind of read it again and break it down a little bit. All right. It's the practice of being fully present in a conversation. I'm going to get into this a little deeper with some bullet dots here in a minute, but usually we're not present. There's lots of distractions around us. The phone's sitting on the table. Maybe there's TV, maybe there's people. So we're not fully present. We're not actually engaged in the conversation. Tune in, pause, and suspend your assumptions. That's probably one of the hardest things we can do, is to suspend the assumption that it's not that big a deal. Your situation was worse. You need to tell your version of the story so that you can understand and comprehend what is being said. So that's pretty self-explanatory, that you can understand what the person is trying to tell you, and that you're able to repeat and restate a paraphrased version of it back to the speaker, so that you are actually listening so intently that you can tell the person in a paraphrased version, hey, this is what I heard you say, so that you don't have any issue with miscommunication. And that way you're demonstrating unbiased, basically unopinionated acceptance, so that you're telling the speaker, I'm hearing exactly what you're saying. I accept what you're telling me, and I don't have an opinion of it at this particular point. I'm just listening to what you're saying to me. So I know that's a lot. Here's a good example. All right, I'm going to use my mom as an example because maybe because she's not here to defend herself, but my mom would do this, especially when it came to medical situations, because she had a lot of different medical procedures in her life. My mother was also borderline personality, so she could have some narcissistic traits. So a lot of things got reflected back on her. So if I said to her, like, well, okay, here's an example. I have to have a colonoscopy. Oh, that's not a big deal. I've had tons of those. Okay. Or when I had to have one of my ovaries taken out, it was like, oh, well, when I had my hysterectomy, oh my gosh, yeah, no, and she would just go off and then tell her whole story. So I didn't even get to tell her anything about what I was feeling, where I was going, when it was happening. It was immediately cut off with me, myself, and I responses. That's something I should have said earlier. When somebody tells you something and your immediate response is a me, myself, and I story or a response, you are not actively listening. And what you're also doing is you're telling the speaker that what they're saying to you is not important. Essentially, you're saying you don't matter. And how awful is that? I mean, I feel like I need to pause after that. How awful is that? So an example of active listening would be, I'm having a colonoscopy next week. and somebody's saying, oh, okay, you know what? I don't have a problem if somebody says, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Are you having to have it because there's an issue, or are you having it because it's routine? Or maybe saying something like, how are you feeling about that? Like just asking questions. And maybe a colonoscopy is not the best. Maybe I'm dating or am I aging myself with that? But if somebody's asking, or excuse me, if somebody's telling you something about something going on in their life, it's your responsibility to say, I hear you. I'm listening to what you're saying. And maybe some of you are saying, okay, well, what does this have to do with not even wine with dinner? What does this have to do with sobriety or being sober curious? Maybe you're somebody who came to this because you're sober curious. Somebody can't help you if they're not listening to you. And on the flip side of that, you can't help someone if you're not listening to them. So if somebody comes to you with, I think I've drank too much, and you're like, oh, you drink normal, I think you're fine, as I heard many times when I was talking about my drinking, that means you're saying what you're telling me is not valid. And again, I think it's shitty. I think it's not nice. I think it's rude. And that's why this is so important. This is so important to me. This is so important to a lot of other people. I think it's important to you if you're listening. If you're here, you're actively listening to me. All right, let's move on. Okay, so one of my notes down here says, once you flip the script onto you, especially if it's a heavy topic, you're saying you don't matter to the speaker. I have so many notes. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. All right, I have a list here of a few things that you can do so that you can start to do active listening. And this is not a comprehensive list. Again, I went online. These are things I know. These are things I've tried to put in practice myself. All right, number one. So earlier when I said be present, I'm going to be a little more harsh. Put the damn phone away. Put away all the crap that is around you when someone's trying to talk to you. And same when you're trying to talk to somebody. That does not mean that you flip your phone upside down on the table. We all do it. We feel like that is now the new social and cultural norm for I'm not looking at my phone. Instead of putting it in your purse or putting it in another room or putting it in your pocket or just getting rid of it, we flip it upside down and we think that that's okay. That is what tells people I'm paying attention to you because I'm not looking at my phone. I do it. But now I've become so conscious of it that I'm starting to put it away. Something I thought was really interesting is my husband and I were watching the news the other day. There was a little roundtable discussion going on. I believe we were watching Sky News. There was a host, and then there were two people sitting on a couch. All three of them had their phones. This was on a news channel. It was so bizarre to me because that was the first time I'd ever noticed that. I just was like, one had it on the table and then the other two had it like right next to their leg. And I thought, you're on a television program and you're reporting about something that's fairly serious. Why do you need to have this sitting next to you in plain sight? It tells everybody that that little box is more important than they are. So all right, so back to the point. Put the phone away. Put the distractions away, whether it is your laptop, your phone, turn off the TV, maybe even turn off the radio or whatever's on. Just allow yourself to be fully present with the person sitting in front of you so that they know that they're the most important thing in the room. It's super important. We all want to be heard, but we can't be heard if we're distracted by all of the other stuff around us. All right. One of my notes here, sorry, let me jump back to this. Unless you're a brain surgeon, chances are you don't need your phone. I'm not discounting anybody in an emergency situation or like with a real emergency situation. Like, okay, when my mom had Alzheimer's, we had all kinds of chaos going on. We had the phones near us. But when you're trying to engage with somebody, you could still put it in your pocket and maybe it vibrates and maybe you check it after the conversation. So I'm just trying to find, a little bit of an alternative to a quote unquote emergency situation. Number two, Ask questions with empathy. And you want to ask open-ended questions when you're talking to somebody. So when someone tells you, I'm having surgery, I'm getting a divorce, I'm really concerned about my child's situation at school, I don't know what to do about blah, 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 whatever it is, ask open-ended questions first. Like, how are you feeling about this? Do you have any kind of alternative option that you can take for that situation? So what I'm hearing is so-and-so's not doing really well in school. I mean, do you have somebody you can speak to about it? Just ask questions. That tells the listener that you're paying attention. We don't do that. We immediately flip it around with, oh, well, when my son had a problem in school, or when I got my divorce, again, me, myself, and I. Try really hard to avoid the me, myself, and I syndrome so that you can ask those questions. And shows that you're curious. It shows you're interested. And that's what we want when we're talking to somebody. We want to feel valued. We want to feel that what we're saying is important. We're all looking for the voice, but we are also looking for the ears. Like I said, one mouth, two ears. Number 3 is reflect back, which is basically what I just said. So what I'm hearing is, so you're expressing to me that this is about to happen, or so what you're telling me is that you're worried that whatever. And again, it doesn't have to sound so clinical. I know the way I have some of these phrased sounds, it just sounds very like therapeutic speak, and we don't tend to speak that way in real life. So again, it's just trying to repeat something back to the friend or whoever it is you're talking to. And what it also does is it avoids miscommunication, because if you reflect something back, like your boss, your coworker is telling you, hey, I want to talk to you about this situation. I don't think this was done correctly. We really need to look at how this happened. You could then say, all right, so what I'm hearing you say is that I didn't do this right, or I didn't do this wrong, or whatever the case may be. And that way you avoid miscommunication, because then the speaker can come back to you and say, well, no, that's not really what I was saying. Let's kind of go over it again. By reflecting back, you avoid any miscommunication with the speaker. All right, and number 4, be patient, pause. I'm literally going to read these from my notes. So if you're actually watching me, that's why I'm telling you this. Be patient, pause, and take a breath. Because we don't think before we speak. And we sure as hell don't think before we type. So this is not just about the speaker that's sitting in front of you. This is about the person who's texted you or sent you a voice message, or is on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, on social media somewhere, writing something. Before you respond to anybody, pause, take a breath. That's probably one of the hardest things for us to do, because our brains are going so fast right now, because we don't have an attention span more than a millisecond, that the minute someone says something to you or you read something, there's usually some trigger word of familiarity. Like there's something in there that you can identify with. And so your brain is automatically like, oh, I had that. I know about that. I've experienced that. And now I've got to tell you my side of it. I have to tell you my version of it. So our brains are just so hyper-focused on responding with our own story that we just don't pause before we respond. And I think that gets us in trouble. I think that's why people fight online. I think that's why we argue online. I said this in one of my previous episodes, and I don't remember which one it was, but when people share things on social media, there's only 2 responses that you're going to get. You're either going to get some sort of acceptance or praise, or you're going to get an argument or a defense. And that doesn't mean, it's funny, I mentioned that to somebody and they were like, I don't do that. And I'm like, yes, you do. Because let me give you the best example. If you post a change in your status, people are going to respond. If you say you're single, they're going to say what happened. If you say you're engaged, they're going to say congratulations. If you say my dog died, they're going to send their condolences. If you got a new puppy, they're going to send congratulations. So it's a praise, it's a congratulations, it's something positive, or it's an affirmation of sorrow, or if you're, God forbid, you're posting something political, I don't know why anybody would want to do that anymore. You're going to have people who agree with you and people who disagree with you. I don't care who you are. You know, I always joke that people don't know who I am. And I mean, in terms of social media, I work as a missionary, as a Christian, and I'm a long-term yoga instructor. So that confuses a lot of people, which is one of the reasons I don't share certain bits of information about my life on social media. It's nobody's business. If you want to assume that I'm on one side or the other, knock yourself out. If you know me as a human being, that's all you need to do. And you make your own opinion of me based on my actions and what you know of me personally. Back to active listening. Like I said, number 4 is super important to be patient. Be patient, pause, think before you speak. Because that person is telling you something because maybe they need you, maybe they want to share with you, maybe it is a congratulations type situation. They want to share good information, or somebody gets engaged. That's not the time for you to talk about your engagement. It's the time for you to share congratulations. And maybe then again, ask questions. When are you getting married? Do you have plans? Have you started preparing? Or again, if it's a heavy topic about alcohol or addiction or a divorce or something, that's not the time to share immediately, I should say. That is not the time to share your experience. That's the time to just listen and pay attention and be empathetic. Let's get our empathy back in this world, people. We all need it. We're all craving it, whether we admit it or not. We are all craving for somebody to listen to what we have to say so that we can have closer communication with one another and closer relationships. If you're not willing to listen to somebody, then you're not willing to learn about them. Listening is the success to our relationships, period. Whether it is a coworker, friend, family, or a partner. If you're not listening, then, as I've said this multiple times now through this episode, you're telling that person you don't matter. And nobody wants to feel that. So hopefully you gleaned a tiny little bit of information from today's episode about active listening. Put the phone away, ask open-ended questions with empathy, reflect back, share back what you heard, and be patient and pause. And on that note, we're going to end for the week. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Be sure and check the show notes for any links that I may have talked about or not talked about. I always like to throw a couple links in there to stories that I've written. So I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and we will catch you next time. As always, stay safe, stay sober. Just a quick note of the legal jargon. I am not a medical or psychiatric professional, nor am I a recovery or addiction specialist. This podcast is for information use only, and I am simply sharing my own experiences with sobriety, drinking, mental health, and wellness. I'm not here to diagnose or to treat. So if you're struggling and you feel like you are in immediate need, please contact a medical professional or call 911. Thank you guys again. Stay safe, stay sober.